Well, fantasy is kind of such an overarching sort of umbrella genre that you can have within the fantasy genre. You can have sci-fi fantasy, ghost story fantasies. I think it's anything that, when I'm working with young people, I always say it's anything that takes the ordinary and turns it into something extraordinary, or something that kind of incorporates magic. There's always elements of light and dark or opposites kind of clashing. So the classic good versus evil thing in Harry Potter, it's the same in Harry Potter as it is in Land of the Witch and the Wardrobe, Lord of the Rings. They're just different versions of a very old human story, which is light versus dark. Anything fantastical, anything that changes the ordinary, like I said, into something special and something unique and something that makes you think, and stories that reflect an alternate reality. I think one of the biggest ones is looking at the world around us. I mean, so much of the greatest fantasies have been about, have drawn. So Tolkien drew on his experiences of World War One, for example, and his dislike of the effects of the Industrial Revolution on the West Midlands, so what is now called the Black Country, and combining how he felt about those things and the sort of, you've got the Shire that he created, which was the world, the England that he loved to look at, and then Mordor's kind of war and, Industrial Revolution and coal mining and all the rest of it, and putting the two together. So I think it's drawing on the world around you is really important. If you look at modern sort of fantasy classics and a lot of the dystopia stuff, which has become, has been a very big thing. Something like the Hunger Games is looking at the kind of the breakdown in society, or potential breakdown in society, the removal of human rights. The idea of a rise in fascism, which we're seeing in Europe anyway at the moment, will be reflected in that. And I think that on a kind of more personal level, especially with younger writers, it's the day-to-day stuff. It's, I'm scared of the dark. I think that it's intrigue, it's suspense, it's amazement, it's all the really good, cool stuff that you want readers to feel. Any writer does with any type of story, but for fantasy it's doubly important that they're intrigued, that they're asking questions. Every question that your reader asks of a situation, a character, their emotions, of what's happening, coming next, is going to keep them engaged with the story. So if you amaze them, they're going to carry on reading. If they're intrigued, they're going to carry on reading. And then once you take them into the world, you need to describe it in a way that it becomes part of sort of their landscape too. Essentially, when we're reading the books we love, we become the main character, or we step into their shoes, or one of the character's shoes, and go into that world. And you've got to take the reader with you, and anything that kind of intrigues them to a point where they want to jump into the world. So, the number of people who wish they'd gone to Hogwarts, for example, it's because J.K. Rowling was so good. I've always done it in quite a simplistic way, in that if you are in a room and you write a story about being in a room, and it's not very interesting unless the room is locked, and then you're thinking, well, it's locked for a reason, and why is it locked, and are you trapped, and who's trapped, and why are they trapped, and how do they feel about it? I think sometimes we can overcomplicate how we put stories together, and some of the best stories are basically about human beings, or animals dressed up as human beings, coming to terms with the world around them and how they feel about it. So it's why school set stories always tend to do so well, because so many young people, all young people in our country, go to school and spend a large amount of time there. So I look for quite simple emotions in characters. I'm looking to find characters who are happy or sad, and then I question them about why they're that way. And perhaps if you live on a concrete estate in the centre of an industrial city like the one I grew up in, you're happy when you see the sea, because I still am to this day. I mean, I drive to Brighton and here, there and everywhere, and as I get closer to the sea, I get happier. When you put stories together, when you're thinking about ideas, you have to have, as the writer, you must have the same sense of wonderment about the world, the same sense of kind of emotion about the world that you had when you were a kid, and you don't ever try to restrict that in any way. So if something makes you feel sad or something makes you feel super happy, you can explore it the same way you would as a child's mind would, which is without any kind of rules or any kind of barriers. And I think the best writers do that. I think Roald Dahl particularly, I'm not sure he acted like a child, I'm sure he particularly liked children, but he wrote really well from a kid's point of view, because I think in his head when he wrote, he was just that 8-year-old boy writing stories that he loved.